one day I was sitting there reading about Dr. Sanguinetti, who was handpicked by Padre Pio to build this Casa Hospital. And Dr. Sanguinetti was quoted uh, 6 years before the hospital actually opened in their magazine that they printed. And I was reading this quote when something very special happened to me. And the quote was, "The Casa Ciudad Sufferenza, which is the home for the relief of suffering, should therefore be the first link in a great chain. It should be the model for many other innumerable casas with the same name and above all the same spirit, which must bring love to all of humanity, a program which would make us tremble with awe if it was not inspired by God, who is above all love." The reason I know that by heart is because that's our vision for Catholic Healthcare International and our Casa USA vision. What happened when I read that was I looked up, and standing in front of me was Padre Pio. It never happened to me before. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before. And he looked at me, and I could feel his hand on my arm, and he said, "It is time." And that was it. And then he disappeared. And I just was awestruck, and I didn't know what to think. And I didn't know whether I was crazy. I didn't know what was going on. I went home. I told my wife, "Something very strange happened to me today. I got to look into it." I have no clue. I did not have a spiritual director at the time. So I went out. At least God impressed me enough to go get somebody to guide me through this. So I went out to Opus Dei and found a really, really good spiritual director who, long story short, helped me discern my way through this, discern the reality of it, and then lay a path out as to how to respond to it. Because as scripture says, you will know them by their fruitfulness. So if something great happens and nothing is a result of it, so what? And everything. So he guided me. He guided me on how to situate my family, because at this point, I had a family to support, and tuitions and everything. So get that all in order so that I could then go pursue this, what I envisioned as a calling. So we got that all set up. We got things situated, and then I went over to San Giovanni Rotondo. I had never met anybody over there before. I didn't know anyone. Someone set me up with some meetings with several people in administration, medical administration. My last meeting was with the president of the hospital, Dr. Domenico Krupi, and we were sitting there having a great conversation, and I was telling him how I was being called by Padre Pio to implement Dr. Sanguinetti's vision of these casas in other areas beyond Italy. And all of a sudden, he stopped. And I had told my wife in advance, I said, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to tell him that this guy from St. Louis, hospital administrator, thinks he's being called to replicate the Casa, what Dr. Sanguinetti said, over in the United States. And I'm going to get thrown out of my ear. They're going to say, what in the world is going on? So anyway, we're having this great conversation, and he stops, and he looks at me, and he says, "Why are you doing this?" And I stopped, and I thought to myself, as vividly as I can remember today as then, here it is. I'm going to get thrown out on my ear. And I said, "Because Padre Pio told me to." And I looked at him, and he kind of smiled, and there was a look in his eyes that I could tell. And I said, "Why are you doing this?" And he goes, "Because Padre Pio told me to." And Dr. Krupi didn't live in San Giovanni. He transported every week from Genoa, which is where his family was, away from his home. It was a great pain for him to have to do this, but he loved it because he was called by Padre Pio. Needless to say, Padre Pio is working on many people in their lives. And I've seen this all throughout since we've pursued this. That was in 2008, and I've seen it all the way through. And I meet people like Greg, who he's touched, but this is over and over and over again. I can countless little things. So suffice it to say, we put together a collaboration agreement. We are formally going out now and trying to implement that. So that is my story of Padre Pio's calling. I share it with you, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's it, period. Padre Pio told us, and we're unworthy instruments, and we're doing the best we can, and he's going to work amazing miracles because we're willing to say yes. As Mother Angelica said, God's looking for people willing to do the ridiculous so that he can do the miraculous.